சாந்தி நிலவ வேண்டும். எங்கும் சாந்தி நிலவ வேண்டும். எங்கும் சாந்தி நிலவ வேண்டும். உலகிலே சாந்தி நிலவ வேண்டும். உலகிலே சாந்தி நிலவ வேண்டும். ஆத்ம சக்தி ஓங்க வேண்டும். உலகிலே சாந்தி நிலவ வேண்டும். ஆத்ம சக்தி ஓங்க வேண்டும். உலகிலே சாந்தி நிலவ வேண்டும். காந்தி மகாத்மா கட்டளை அதுவே. காந்தி மகாத்மா கட்டளை அதுவே. காந்தி மகாத்மா கட்டளை அதுவே. கருணை ஒற்றுமை கதிரொளி பரவி சாந்தி நிலவ வேண்டும். காந்தி மகாத்மா கட்டளை அதுவே. கருணை ஒற்றுமை கதிரொளி பரவி சாந்தி நிலவ வேண்டும். எங்கும் சாந்தி. எங்கும் சாந்தி.
Namaskar and welcome to Namaste 2020 and Swagatam to all of you. This is the session on Sama, the transdisciplinary nature of Indian knowledge systems, brought to you by the Center for Soft Power in collaboration with the ICCR and also the support of S. Vyasa University. We were wondering what to call this session, and then we said, what better than science, arts, maths, and astronomy too. And why we called it this was because we realized that the Indian knowledge systems are very transdisciplinary in nature. I remember we once had a workshop on perfumery, because we're in the perfumery business, on fragrance. And I was very particular that we should invite a Sanskrit scholar for this. And because somewhere we always think that perfumery began in France. And I said, no, there is so much reference from our own heritage literature. So we had invited this Sanskrit scholar, and he quoted from so many references on fragrance and perfumery. And he said, well, I don't really know perfumery, but just from learning the language, because he is a D.Litt in several languages, he said, I knew all about perfumery. And then I began to think, I mean, if you look at any knowledge system of ours, it's very transdisciplinary in nature. You learn music and you learn dance, you're learning math along with it. So there is so much to do with all our different knowledge systems that if we actually educate ourselves well in Sanskrit itself, we've learned a lot. So I would like to welcome Ambassador Sripriya Ranganathan Madam and Professor Subhash for a start, and we will welcome all the rest of the panel soon after we have our ambassador speak. She was very kind to accept this invitation of ours for an odd hour like this, but I guess for her it's all right. I would like to say a few words about her. Sripriya Ranganathan, she is a career diplomat who joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1994. The ambassador has held a variety of positions in New Delhi and other stations abroad. She served in Myanmar as the second in command at the Embassy of India, Yangon. Her other overseas postings were in Ankara and Hong Kong. During her multiple years experience in headquarters, she has served in various capacities in the Ministry of External Affairs as well as in the Ministry of Commerce. She served as Joint Director, Director General, responsible for relations with Bangladesh and Myanmar. She has also headed the SARC division and the policy planning divisions in the ministry. Madam, over to you now.
Thank you so much. Good morning to all of you. Good morning to the founder of this academy, Sri Harikaran Vadlamani. Good morning to you, Srimati Vijayalakshmi, Director of the Center for Soft Power. Good morning to the chair of this session, Professor Kak, and to my fellow panelists. I first of all would like to congratulate the Center for Soft Power for organizing this Namaste 2020 event, which I believe will really help us to showcase the myriad aspects of India's very, very rich cultural traditions and the adaptations that have been made by our artists in all walks of life to the current needs of, to the current trends and the needs of today. And this ranges from fields like classical dance and music, arts and handicrafts, textiles and fashion, literature, architecture, traditional knowledge systems, cuisine, digital technology, and so on. I really feel very privileged that that I'm able to contribute to these discussions and dwell at some very briefly on the cultural connections that exist between India and the people of Korea. Right from the time that I came to this country, and that was exactly 2 years ago, I have been very struck by the extent of curiosity about India and the familiarity about India. I think the magic of Indian culture and the Indian historical footprint has left a very, very deep impact on Korea. It's well known that India and Korea share a strong historical and cultural legacy and a common lineage too. There are deep linguistic connections between us, with many of the Dravidian languages, especially Tamil, sharing common words with Hangul. It's in fact believed that anywhere between 500 and 5,000 words of Tamil are similar to or identical to words with the same meaning in Hangul. Over 2.5 million Korean people trace their ancestry to the legendary romance between Princess Suriratna of Ayodhya, who became Queen Her when she came to Korea and married King Kim Suro of the Gaya Kingdom. So I have met so many people in Korea who tell me that I have Indian blood in my veins because I am a Gimhae Kim or I am an Incheon Her, and I really feel so connected with India. Now, along with it is also believed that along with Princess Suriratna came the first Buddhist monks who brought the message of the Buddha to the people of Korea. And this is a community which has been very, very prominent in Korea over the decades. Though, of course, now with the overall declining trend in the Korean population and the growing reluctance of the younger generations to be really strongly affiliated with any religion, the numbers are shrinking. But I still believe that Buddhism is another very, very strong connection between the people of India and the people of Korea. In more contemporary times, our freedom fighters shared their thoughts and their inspiration with each other, both the Korean and the Indian freedom fighters. And I find that the very prescient words of Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore pertaining to Korea, when he referred to the country as the lamp of the East, is still recited with pride and with great affection by the Korean people. Indeed, there is a very active Tagore Society in Seoul, which continues to study his works. They meet periodically, they bring out publications, and they really try to carry and keep alive the message of Tagore locally. There is a bust of Tagore. I think this is one of the rare busts of a foreign thinker, leader, which has been placed in the streets of Seoul, and one of those is actually that of Tagore. The other is that of Gandhi, whom we placed in one of the universities a year ago, when we were in the middle of various activities to celebrate the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Food, Indian food is really something which the Korean people like a lot, and I find Indian restaurants everywhere. I mean, we as Indians may say that, hey, are these really Indian restaurants? Are these serving genuinely Indian food? But Korean people look at it as Indian food, and they say this is curry, and this is naan, and this is idli. So, there is that little bit of awareness and that acceptance, I would say, to something that we Indians take a lot of pride in. Similarly, I find yoga studios everywhere. I find practitioners of yoga everywhere. When we conduct our International Day of Yoga celebrations, there is a huge turnout. Now, here again, we could take issue, and we could say that the form of yoga that is being taught at these studios, are these the purest yoga? Is this Iyengar yoga? Is this Shivananda yoga? Maybe not, but there is awareness of yoga. There is an awareness that there is a mind, body, spirit connection. The journey towards achieving that is, of course, a little different, and that is something I guess we have to accept, that there is a localization and an evolution which happens with any cultural tradition. In the field of academics, I find that there are Indologists. There is a department of Indology in virtually all the leading Korean universities. In the past, these have been focused on linguistics. So, there are a lot of students who have studied Sanskrit, who have studied Hindi. There continue to be studies in yoga, for example. But in the more contemporary times, there is a larger school of thought that we need to focus on Indian economy and Indian politics, because India is the future, and we need to make our students capable of taking advantage of the potential that exists. So in the colleges, I find that there is a great deal of interest in and awareness of India as well. I think all of these are really elements of the special strategic partnership that exists between India and Korea, and these form the pillars of the future-oriented partnership for prosperity, peace, and the people, which is what the two leaders have decided that we should be crafting in the years to come. I think looking ahead, to my mind, there is a need to focus on very concretely on cross-cultural collaboration between Indian and Korean artists. The Korean Hallyu tradition has already won its fans across the world. The question that I would have, and what we are trying to explore at the embassy and at the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center here in Seoul, is how can Indian and Korean artists collaborate to create something new, to bring to the people a new form of cultural expression, be it in music, be it in art, be it in dance, in films, in pottery, in new forms of textiles. How can we encourage innovations? How can we encourage interaction that will expand the Korean and the Indian cultural footprint across the globe even further? I am very, very confident that if we are able to enable the artists on both sides to interact more frequently, interact through workshops, through these kind of online events, something new, something very exciting will emerge. I've seen this during our annual Sarang festival every year, when we have brought together Indian and Korean dancers, we've brought together Indian and Korean musicians, chefs, painters, and we found that there is a kind of a symbiotic relationship, and something new emerges. I believe that we can take this interest also into the arena of films. into the arena of television programs. Koreans like us enjoy very emotional themes, enjoy very emotional films, and I think this is very clearly evident in the success of films like Indian Bollywood films like Three Idiots, My Name Is Khan, Dangal. I mean, Dangal is a film about which uh, virtually anybody I talk to about Korean film, they'll say, "Hey, we've gone and watched Dangal, or we've heard about Dangal, and it's such a strong film." We brought Secret Superstar here last year as part of our film festival, and I had an audience which was about 500 people. 50% of them were in tears at the end of the film, and they were literally, how thank you so much for bringing us this really beautiful film and such a strong film. And now we understand why the women of India are as strong and as much part of the Indian success story as the men. And this is what we need in Korea. So I think there is a great deal of receptivity and acceptance. And similarly, I find that the reverse is true. There are the Korean blockbusters like Parasite, The Train to Busan, Handmaiden, Taxi Driver. I think these have all become very iconic films in India as well. And the discerning Indian film viewer has been very impressed and very stimulated by these films. Korean TV dramas. I mean, who could say that that the kind of following of Korean TV dramas in our own Northeast. And this is something that I discovered when I was doing an interview for the Arirang TV channel. It's normally a channel that carries Korean culture to audiences across the world, but they wanted to also have a sense of what the India-Korea connections are. And they were the ones who told me that some of their top TRP shows are the K dramas that are being followed by our people in the Northeast. Here at the Cultural Center, we're trying to play up some of these things. I have at the moment ongoing projects for a Korean Pansori singer. That is a vocalist with a very very strong classical bent, joining hands with an Indian Hindustani classical singer to try and create something new. I think similarly, there is an Indian pottery artist who's worked from Shantiniketan who is planning to work with a Korean maestro to try and see if they can share the techniques, they can share their stimulation with each other. K-pop stars, they enjoy such a fan following in India. How can we enable Indian contemporary music artists to collaborate with Korean pop stars to come up with a new genre? I think the more we explore these thoughts, the more we enable our artists to engage, to talk to each other, to share their knowledge, their experiences. The more we will find something meaningful will emerge out of this relationship. I think as we were talking before this program began, in some ways the challenge of the COVID-19 pandemic is also an opportunity, because the conventional way in which a performing artist has engaged with an audience, the performing artist on the stage, the audience in the off stage in the auditorium, that perhaps for the next few months, maybe even slightly longer, is not going to be possible. So are we really going to be able to use alternative means, use digital technology to enable collaborations so that really the reach of our culture can be expanded exponentially? I am very optimistic. I think that there is a lot of scope for this and more, and I look forward to hearing all of you in the course of this session, and having also some ideas that I can take back with me. And through the Cultural Center and through the embassy, we are also able to reach out to the Korean people at this end. Thank you all once again, and thank you to the SOFPA Center for giving me this opportunity. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, madam. There are many things that I'm sure we can all join together and do. I would fail if I do not mention that the invocation was sung by 11-year-old Akshara Samskriti. She's the daughter of Carnatic musician Kiranavali and a multidiscipline scholar Vidya Shankar Sundareshan. She's been performing regularly at venues in India and the US. Now I would like to say a few words about Professor Subhash, who I think is very, very well known everywhere in all avenues of people who want knowledge. Professor Subhash is a Regents Professor of Computer Science at Oklahoma State University in Stillwater, and he's a member of the Indian Prime Minister's Science, Technology and Innovation Advisory Council. He has served on academic advisory committees of the Smithsonian and NIST and on the advisory boards of several technology companies. He is the author of 20 books, including his autobiography, The Circle of Memory. He is featured as one of the interviewees in the area of mathematics and information in the long-standing PBS series, Closer to Truth. And I must say that I practically start my day looking at Professor Subhash Kak's posts because they are so interesting and so varied in nature too. So over to you, sir, and you can take the chair forward now. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijayalakshmi ji, and it's a delight to be a part of this conversation. Namaskar to all the viewers. We are going to have, we have a star-studded panel, and you already heard Ambassador Sripriya Ranganathan and all the wonderful work that's being done in Korea and all the interfaces that exist between Korean culture and Indian culture, and in so many different ways which can be taken forward. Now, in the initial remarks, I just want to talk about a couple of things. First of all, looking at the future, India also offers a lot of opportunities for understanding. At this point in the world, we are standing at a juncture of confusion, as you can see in the TV images coming from American cities, and similar troubles in Europe as well. So there is a lot of doubt in the future. There is fear that AI and pervasive automation are going to take away jobs forever. There is also confusion in the sciences itself. This session Sama, not only does it include arts, but it also includes sciences and mathematics. So we are really going to be doing a lot of things here. So there's confusion even in the sciences, because in physics, for example, there is this supposition that 95% of the physical reality is unknown. There is no evidence for it, and we call it dark matter and dark energy, which means that there's really something incomplete about our understanding of the physical reality. But I want to talk about maybe things which are an interface of cultures. A couple of days ago, I tweeted a beautiful image of a 2,000-year-old gold casket with 8 images, 4 of which are repeated. And this casket is in the British Museum right now. It was found in Afghanistan about 100 years ago. And the 3 images that are repeated have Brahma on the left, Buddha in the middle, and Indra on the right. So people ask me, and it's a beautiful, beautiful piece. So people ask me, what are Buddha and Indra doing there? And this is a question which one comes across when one looks at images not only in ancient Central Asia, and certainly Afghanistan, but also China and Southeast Asia and Korea and Japan. And the answer, of course, to that, which Indians have forgotten, is that the idea of Trimurti carried over to the Buddhists. And so they adopted Buddha, and instead of Vishnu, they had Indra, and Shiva was replaced by Buddha. And the reason why they did that was because Shiva and Buddha correspond to the same category of the cognitive systems within us. If Shiva is Atman, Buddha is Buddhi, which is a part of the same complex. But elsewhere, for example, in Java, there was even a deity which was called Shiva Vishnu. And there's also a very famous uh, poem, which is a part of the poem from which Panchashil comes out, where it's stated that Shiva and Buddha are the same. So there's a lot which we take for granted as being settled scholarship, but that's not necessarily true. And we can speak to people in Java, for example, or Korea and Japan and in China and elsewhere to the East. If we knew our understanding of the rise of Buddhism and the various forms it took, and since Ambassador Ranganathan is in Korea, we also have from the Mahaparinirvana Sutra of the Mahayana, where Buddha on his deathbed finally acknowledged that he did believe that there was something permanent like the Atman. And what he told his disciples at that point was that until now I have told you that there is nothing beyond your mind, that there is shunyata or there is anatta, but in reality there is something which is permanent and which has been called Buddhakaya and so on and so forth. So this is to the east, and likewise to the west, there is more understanding now how India, not only after the meeting of the East and West, subsequent to prior to the Industrial Revolution, subsequent to Vasco da Gama and opening up of the sea trade in the last 300-400 years, there was a much more direct connection between the cultures of India and the Slavic world. And the Slavs also worshipped Parjanya, for example, who is a form of Vishnu. And the Indian deities were all over the Slavic world, and possibly there were connections certainly with the Celts as well. So I think knowledge of all of this in a period where people all over the world are trying to reach to their own ancient past, and India as a civilization which was connected both to the East and the West opens up several opportunities of first of all, establishing dialogue between India and the other countries, and also facilitating understanding also for ourselves. And I say this because for a variety of very complicated reasons, the education system that is, Indians themselves do not know a lot about all of these things. And one hopes that the efforts of the Center for Soft Power and many other efforts that are underway will change that picture. I also want to say a few things about inner sciences. Yoga is everywhere, not only in Korea, but you go to any place, the smallest towns in the US, you find yoga studios. And here sitting in the US in the middle, one gets invited to all kinds of places, including churches, towns, villages, and they want to hear more about it. They want to go beyond the asanas and exercises and want to explore further the whole question of what meaning of life is. And as I said in my opening remarks, these issues have become rather urgent now because people are also fearful of the future. They are afraid that jobs will go away, that they must now turn inwards and get a better understanding of who they are in order to deal with the stresses of life. And in America, it is a challenge. As you know, about 60 to 70,000 people in the prime of their lives, in their 30s and 40s with beautiful families, get into horrible addictions of the kind where they eventually overdose on opioids and kill themselves. So there are lots of opportunities where India can reach out in diverse ways to all people in all cultures, because people all over the world, if you leave them alone, want to know what the truth is. You know, sometimes cultures become obstacles, but if you're not pushing anybody and if you are using dhvani, you know, the great Indian aesthetic theory of Anandavardhan and Abhinav Gupta, Dhwani, where you use suggestion to communicate deeper meaning. If you use Dhwani, we should be able to find that connection with people everywhere. In fact, in one of the Center for Soft Power meetings in Delhi in 2018, and Vijay Lakshmi ji was also there, there was this speaker from Saudi Arabia, and she spoke about how yoga is one of the hottest things going on amongst women in Saudi Arabia. We also had a speaker from Iran who spoke about, once again, the popularity of yoga in Iran. So there are lots of things that are happening in the world of history, arts, culture, and also medicine, to which I will come to slightly later when we have gone around the panel. So I'll stop right now, and then I'll take some of these threads up again later.
Thank you, Professor Kak. We now have Dr. Ramasubramanian. He is an institute chair professor at the Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay. And in recognition of his outstanding scholarship, the prestigious Maharishi Badrayan Vyas Sanman was conferred upon him by the President of India in 2008. Over to you, sir.
Namaste to all of you. I'm delighted to be a part of this panel, which is chaired by Professor Subhash Kak. And the theme, overall theme that has been given for this panel is transdisciplinary nature of Indian knowledge systems. We all know that this Indian knowledge system is something which is very, very, very vast. So this Indian knowledge system has been beautifully brought out by the opening invocatory song. The ultimate purpose of this Indian knowledge system was brilliantly brought out, which is Shanti Nilava Vendum. So we may have various pursuits in our life, but ultimately what one needs in life is a certain inner tranquility. So we may have a lot of pursuits towards understanding the nature, improving our technology comforts, and so on and so forth. But if there is no Shanti, a certain inner tranquility, then I think the entire purpose of our pursuit is lost. So this was started with this. I thought of basically presenting a few verses wherein this larger understanding of this transdisciplinary nature and the requirement of this transdisciplinary nature is conveyed by some of our acharyas. Let me just start with one interesting observation which has been made by Sushruta. First of all, even if we take this word transdisciplinary, there are so many words which are used, which is, so you say cross-disciplinary, you say multidisciplinary, you say interdisciplinary. So we use transdisciplinary. So are they synonymous, first of all? I mean, if one thinks, in some sense, maybe one can use one word for the other. But if we probe deeply, this multidisciplinary has some sort of a connotation to convey. We have to cross that. So then more deeper will be interdisciplinary and more deeper will be transdisciplinary. So that one feeds into the other is the larger understanding that we need to have. If we keep on pursuing in a particular direction, then I think it may not lead to what we ultimately seek for. So this is the duty of Indian knowledge systems, and this has been very beautifully brought out by Sushruta, for instance. Sushruta in his Sushruta Samhita, right at the beginning, so he says, Ekam Shastra Madhiyanaha Navidyat Shastra Nishchayam Tasmad Bahushrudaha Shastram Vijaniyat Chikitsakaha. Ekam Shastra Madhiyanaha Navidyat Shastra Nishchayam. Tasmad Bahushrutaha Shastram Vijaniyat Chikitsakaha. So basically he says, if you just pursue in a particular way, then you will not know the overall large picture that is important. And this is extremely important for a person who is doing chikitsa on playing on the other person, okay, the body, the health. So this is something. Tasmad Bahushrutaha. Bahushrutaha means, so he should have listened from various people on various perspectives. So otherwise, so as even she was saying, so an appreciation of others' culture, an understanding of other discipline, how it can pull into our understanding. So is all something which is important. Bahushrutaha Vijaniyat Chikitsakaha. So further he goes on and then says, if you do not do this, so then any person, any professional as a medical doctor, if he does not do this, then he says he is only taskara. He is not even a doctor. Okay. Savai Navidyat Shastra Nishchayam Tasmat Bahushruta Shastram Vijaniyat Chikitsakaha Shastram Guru Mukhodgirnam Adaya Upasya Cha Asakritu Yah Karma Kurute Vaidyaha Savaidyaha Anyetu Taskaraha. This is a very powerful message. What does he say? Shastram Guru Mukhodgirnam. So irrespective of discipline that you are pursuing, you should learn it from the right person. Be it physics, be it technology, be it medicine, be it Adhyatma Shastra, all the more important. Guru Mukhodgirnam means someone who has clearly understood. So from him if we learn, then we will understand the purport of the Shastra, otherwise it is meaningless. Shastram Guru Mukhodgirnam Adaya means first you receive this knowledge. That is not sufficient. He says, Upasya cha asakritu. So it is our duty to keep contemplating on it. Asakritu upasya means not once, but you have to keep repeatedly thinking on it. So unless you do, this is why we say Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. So this is not necessarily for Adhyatma Vidya alone, but for any Vidya for that matter. So therefore he says, Upasya cha asakritu. Upasana is a very powerful term. You keep contemplating on it. Upasya cha asakritu yah karma kurute. So the one who proceeds then, Vaidyaha, he alone can be considered as a Vaidya. Anyetu taskaraha. So the other people should be simply conceived as thieves. So this is very true of any discipline. I mean, if you go and listen to some lectures, so be it physics, be it mathematics, so there is no deeper understanding without that if it is being communicated. So then, I mean, they are just taking money from you for no reason. So that is the whole purpose. So this is extremely important, particularly for a Vaidya, and therefore right at the beginning, I mean, he conveys this, and then only you can proceed with respect to this discipline, particularly when you are playing with human life. So let me just give you if we do not understand the transdisciplinary nature, so how yoga can contribute. I mean, you can isolate a person and then that doesn't make him really get cured. So there are various aspects. This holistic approach to medicine is a very, very important case, which I thought. So you can just share the screen. Can you just share the screen? I think there is a possibility they have opened up. Okay. So the negative outcome of not understanding the transdisciplinary nature. So I just thought I will just show you one example. So which is being done. I mean, recently I came across a certain article, and this article, there's no provision, doesn't matter, just leave it there. So there was an article which most of us can see in the web. So this was an article which was written by some Harvard professor, Karin Michaels. So this article was primarily to deal with this coconut oil and its effect. So the title of the article was, So it is the statement, in fact, which was written is coconut oil is a pure poison. Okay, and it is one of the worst foods that one can eat. So this is the kind of message that was given. So people immerse themselves in coconut oil in Kerala, and are they not healthy people? So this is the kind of thing. So if you do not have a much larger perspective of understanding, so why was he saying? He was just saying because saturated fat is higher, and therefore the bad LDL cholesterol will be higher and the higher probability of heart disease and so on and so forth. So this human behavior is so complicated. Human system is so complicated. It gets adapted to a certain system. So all this larger understanding has to be there. So that is the point I wanted to convey here with reference to this transdisciplinary nature. So if we just focus on something, then I think we will be completely misled. Similarly, even in our pursuits, if you feel that this luxury and comfort is what is more important, then we may miss the ultimate thing, which is that happiness and shanti. Okay, let me come to the importance that has been conveyed for for having this transdisciplinary understanding by our acharyas. Just one or two verses I wanted to just convey. We have this famous saying, the point I wanted to convey was this Indian knowledge system has very clearly understood the importance of studying Nyaya Shastra. So it says, there is a general saying that Kanadam Paniniyancha Sarvashastropakarakam. See, Kanadam Paniniyancha Sarvashastropakarakam. This is a general principle. So Kanada is basically, you should have a clear approach to your problem. So a clarity in thinking is absolutely essential, irrespective of the discipline that you pursue. So that is why they say, there could be a lot of fallacies in your reasoning. So you yourself have to figure out where there could be fallacy, and then you should present. So it is for this we have this Kanada. And for us to understand this Paniniyam, so it is basically a particular word that has been employed should be understood in that particular context. So this linguistic, the study of linguistics and grammar is all the more important. So therefore, they impress upon these two disciplines as the most fundamental disciplines for pursuing any other discipline of study. Further moving on, so there is a very, very powerful statement which has been made by, so this Acharya, Bhaskara Acharya, who is so famous for his intellectual accomplishments. So he says, Yo Veda Veda Sadanam Sadanam hi Samyak Brahmyasa Vedamapi Veda Kimanya Shastram Yasmadatah Prathamameta Adhitya Dhiman Shastrantarasya Bhavati Shravane Adhikari. So Adhikari means you are qualified to enter. So as we just say, only if you qualify Jain you can enter into IIT. So too, for you to enter into this discipline, this has been very clearly laid out that you have to do this. And there is another Acharya called Nityananda. So I'm just telling you, this is a very bold saying, and then this understanding has been transmitted. Unfortunately, so in our tradition, if you just look at, so you study Veda, you study Vedanga, and then only you are qualified. So you, for interpreting, in fact, Professor Iyengar, so who has been kind enough to be in our panel, so he is trying to analyze this Rigvedic mantras and what are the various connotations which one can have for this mantra. So this approach is extremely important. So this for us to understand the overall perspective. So keeping this in mind, there is another person which says Nityananda, so 17th century person. So in his text, he says, I just quote the verse, so some of you will be able to appreciate. Pati kuttaka bijagola nipunaha vedanga parangamaha kavyahalankriti shilpa shastra kushalaha yonyaya shastra adivit siddhantetra samasta vastu sahite tasyadhikaro bhaved Chedevam na yatha kathanchid abhidha matram prasiddhim nayet. So the Siddhanta is the name of a classic text in astronomy. Siddhantetra samasta vastu sahite. So he lists several disciplines: Pati, Kuttaka, Bija, Gola, Nipunaha. So these are all various branches of mathematics which one has to excel for entering into astronomy. But then he doesn't stop there. He says, Kavya Lankriti, Shilpa Shastra Kushalaha. So astronomy is not simply confined. So if you look at the marvelous constructions that have been made, so you can very easily appreciate the transdisciplinary knowledge system that has been there. Otherwise, we will not be able to design some such thing. Kavya, Shilpa Shastra refers to architecture, Shilpa Shastra refers to geometry, Shilpa Shastra refers to spherical trigonometry. Kavya Lankriti Shilpa Shastra Kushalaha. And then he further says, Yo Nyaya Shastra Divit. Then he says, Siddhantetra Samasta Vastu Sahite. So all of them are incorporated in the Siddhanta text. So in some way or other way, Samasta Vastu Sahite Tasyadhikaro Bhavet. Only that person should venture to write anything. So everybody has started writing today. Samasta Vastu Sahite Tasyadhikaro Bhavet. Chedevam. I'll stop with this. The final statement is very interesting. Chedevam. If only this is satisfied and only people who are knowledgeable and who have... see, recently I'm not joking. So some physics professor from somewhere in the north, he sent me a book. So I am writing about science and technology in India. So I was absolutely appalled to see that this person writing this, all this heliocentric thing was there, this is there, that is there, that is there. So without any understanding of what it is, I mean, so we had the notion of satellite. I said, where is the notion of satellite coming into picture? So we understood that moon is a satellite of Earth. I mean, satellite is something which is very different from understanding it as some object which is moving around you. So all kinds of messing up things, that is what happens. So that is what he is trying to say. Chedevam na yatha kathanchit abhidha matram prasiddhim nayet. Abhidha matram means only the literal meaning will be projected by that fellow. So they will not, the guna has 10 different connotations in different shastras. So you will be thoroughly confusing one with the other. Abhidha matram prasiddhim nayet. So I think there are other beautiful things. So if only time permits, I will come back. So given the time constraint, I think I will just stop here. I will listen to others and then we can take it further. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, Dr. Ramasubramanian. We now welcome Professor Gauri Mahulikar. She is the former officiating Vice Chancellor, Chinmaya Vishwavidyapeeth, former head Sanskrit Department, Mumbai University, and former head of Gurudev Tagore Chair of Comparative Literature, Mumbai. Her PhD was on Vedic elements in Puranic mantras and rituals. Today, she will speak to us about the science in Yagashalas. Thank you.
Hari Om. Namaste Sharade Devi Kashmir Puravasini Tvamaham Prarthaye Nityam Vidya Nanancha Dehime. On this platform of Namaste 2020, a digital platform, I am very fortunate to share this digital screen with so many stalwarts here. And I will be speaking something on the science in the Yagashalas. So for that, I have few slides which are based on basically the Shilva Sutras. In fact, the science starts from the Yagashalas, from the construction of the Vedas and different locations of different like Ahavani Agni, Dakshina Agni, Garhapatya Agni, the Utkara, the Mahavedi itself. Everything is so scientifically arranged, the Utkara also. So it is really wonderful to see, especially the geometry I will be dealing with in this. There are like esoteric science is also there. Because as Ramasubramanian ji just told, Bahushritata, that was emphasized in all our systems, in all our shastras by our ancient seers. So it's not that only one shastra you study and you know everything. you have to study so many other shastras as well. And designs, now when I speak of geometry, it's basically the circle, the square, the rectangle, the triangle, all such figures I am dealing with. And when we draw a circle, how the circular thing was drawn, especially the chariots, when the chariot wheels were made, there was a shanku and then a cord or a rajju, which is called shulba, or a rajju or a cord or a string. And then from that fixed point, it is moved round and then a circular shape could be made. So Yaga started, basically the Yajna Sanskriti started from the Yajurveda, the Brahmana literature, and then the Kalpasutras which include of Shrauta, including Shulba, then Griha and Dharma Sutra. So the Shrauta Sutra is the main focus of this. And there were some artists and architects also who made the chariot wheels. And therefore, they were also consulted, and they should be consulted before constructing the chittis, says Katyayana very clearly. In the very first Kandika, the shloka number 6, he says, Shilpibhyaha sthapatibhyascha adadita matihi sada. From Shilpi and Sthapati, from the architectures and the artists, you should take their opinion before constructing the chitti. So this is really very, very important that artists and architectures, their opinions are taken into consideration. Nowhere, they are underestimated that they are just artists and something like that. So it is very interesting to note this point. Then Kalpa, being a Vedanga, is an auxiliary limb of the entire Vedic corpus, and basically the chariot wheels, the circular shape started, and then the fire altars. What is Kalpa basically? When Sayana explains this, he says, Kalpyate samarthyate yaga prayogaha atra iti kalpaha. Kalpyate, that is samarthyate, it is endorsed, it is supplemented or is explained. What? Yaga prayogaha, the ritualistic tradition, how to perform yaga, how to perform yajna. So the manual of the performance, the operations, the execution of the ritual aspect is called kalpa. In our tradition, the entire Veda Purusha, Veda is comprised or is visualized as a Purusha. And then it is said, Hastau kalpotha pathyate, mukham vyakaranam smritam, niruktam shrotram uchyate, etc. So kalpa is regarded as a hasta because, you require your hands to make the offerings, etc. So it is really the manual of conducting rituals, and the geometry started here. For example, there are different shapes and the chitti. Shatapatha Brahmana, for example, it gives 6 types of chittis like Drona, Ratha Chakra, Kanka, Prauga, and so on. Okay. And so many technical terms are also used there, like Shanku, which is a central peg. And I think I should share some of the slides. I can share it. I will just share because there are certain figures there. So I would like others also to see the figures which I have borrowed from a book called The Vedic. So these are the fire altars, Drona, Ratha Chakra, etc. So this is the Ratha Chakra Chitti. My cursor is here. Ratha Chakra Chitti, a circular chitti like a Ratha Chakra. And this is the Prauga Chitti, which is a triangular. Prauga, which is a triangular chitti. And so many different terms are used. I mean, these designs here, they refer to different types of ishtikas or the bricks which are prepared, for constructing a chitti or a fire altar. And different technical terms are used like Shanku, which is a central peg. Normally, there is a central peg here, and then the Rajju is moved from all these directions. Then Dakshina Shroni, Uttara Shroni, Purvardha, Dakshinausha, Uttarausha. These are some of the technical terms which are used while constructing the chittis. Now, basically, the yajna is called as ritasya yonihi. Rita again is a very peculiar Vedic concept, and this could be like a cosmic order, we can say, or a cosmic law. And yajna is as if the lap or the origin of Rita. And different shapes of altar, and these are described, in various Kalpasutras, mainly 4 types of Kalpasutras: the Katyayana, Baudhayana, Apastamba, and Manava Shulba Sutra. So in the Kalpasutras, these are the Shulba Sutras, which are these 4 are very famous. How to build an altar, what are the measurements of the bricks, how to make the bricks, and how to make the sacrificial instruments like Srivas, then Juhu, all these things, even the Chamasa, So this science is described here. So here we can see the square altar, which is a very modern one, and therefore Rangoli, etc. is put. And this is the Kanka or the Shena or the Garuda Chiti, Vakra Garuda Chiti, etc. Of a shape of a hawk or an eagle, falcon, you can say. There are some more shapes like this is Ubhayataha Prayuga Chiti. Ubhayataha Prauga. Prauga is a triangular thing which we saw earlier, and this is Ubhayataha Prauga Chiti, 2 sides triangles, making it a rhombus type of shape. And every chiti had 5 layers. And what should be the measurement of the brick and how many bricks to be used in every layer, all that description is there. The 1st, 3rd, and 5th are normally the similar. The 2nd and the 4th are similar. So this is the Prauga Chiti. Then this is the Ratha Chakra Chiti with spokes, the 1st, 3rd, and the 5th layers. These are made in the 1st, 3rd, and the 5th layers in this manner. This is the Vakranga Kurma Chiti. Kurma is a tortoise. So Vakranga Kurma Chiti. There is Vakra Shena Chiti as well. So these are the different shapes. And this in geometry, while making such shapes, especially the squarish one, the diagonal or the hypotenuse is of importance. And then Baudhayana Shulba Sutra, which is dated almost like 800 to 900 before the Common Era, much before Pythagoras was born, right? But we know this Siddhanta as a Pythagorean principle. It's high time we should be knowing it by Baudhayana's principle. And Dirgha Chaturasrasya Akshnaya Rajjuhu Parshvamani Tiryangmani Yat Prithak Bhute Kurutaha Tad Ubhayam Karoti. Basically, it gives that, this the AB square plus BC square is equal to AC square. So that is what we have learned as a Pythagorean principle in our school geometry. So the areas produced separately by the length and the breadth of a rectangle together equal the area produced by the diagonal. So this is the principle which is given in Baudhayana Shulba Sutra. When I was talking about the Yagashalas as a whole, this is a slide which is already published on YouTube, a lecture given by me in Open Learning for All, Yajurveda lecture. So this has that Ola Open Learning for All, that tagline is here. Okay, so this is the Yagashala picture. The entire sacrificial enclosure is drawn here so meticulously, with the Mahavedi on one part and the 3 types of fires here, the Dakshina, Ahavaniya, Garhapatya, the Yajamana. And then here facing to the east is this Shenachiti. We'll have a more close-up of this Shenachiti in the next slide. This is the Mahavedi. This is the Uttaravedi. So there are so many, like 12, 14, 15 different things, which are required in a Yagashala, and everything is very meticulously planned and free from error. Everything is so perfect and so accurate. There is no scope for any error, flawless and seamless. So this is a closure and a 3D picture of this Dakshinagni. Then this Garhapatyagni, this is the Vedi, Ahavaniya. So this is all the Agnihotra Vihara. This is the Agnihotra Vihara. And this Shenachiti, this comprises of 1005 bricks. 1005 bricks. This this is the Shane or the falcon, and his face is towards the east, and the ahutis are laid here. We have a figure, you know, which got excavated, and we got it in Purulia, in Uttarakhand. I'll show it in the next slide. And this is a Kamya Yajna for material happiness, health, wealth, sons, heaven, etc. Like we say, Jyotishto mena sarga kamo yajeta. So this is a Kamya Yajna going on for 12 days, and 1005 bricks are used in that. This is the actual construction. You can see the height of this, the 5 layers are here, okay? And here in the midst, the offerings are offered. Actual fire is enkindled here. And archaeological evidence is the Shenachiti was found in Purola in Uttarakashi, dated 1st century Christian era. So this is the archaeological find. This is the Shenachiti which is built. And recently in 1956 in Kerala, one Somayaga Tiratra was performed, and that video is also going on viral on WhatsApp. I saw it on WhatsApp some 15-20 days back, and it was performed in 1956. So Kerala, this land is known. I am in Kerala now. So this land is known for Somayagas, the Tiratra, and the Nambudris are very famous for reciting the Samans and doing such yagas here. Now, when it comes to the bricks, you know, the bricks, it is not that they are made up of clay, okay? But when they are baked and when they are dried, they shrink. The size gets shrunk. So that is also taken into consideration, that during the baking process and during the drying process, the original size would be shrunk. How much shrinking? 1/32 units is it shrinks. So while making the mold, the wet mold should be 1/32 units more than what is required for the construction of the Vedas. And Katyayana Shulba Sutra in the 7th Kandika, he clearly says, Rasate Pakashoshabham Dvatrimshat Bhagamishtika Tasmad Ardra Pramanantu Karyam Mana Adhikam Budhaihi. So Ardra Pramanam, Mana Adhikam, more than whatever is required. So that measure you have to make, because Rasate, it diminishes, it shrinks. The shape, the size, it shrinks, while Paka and Shosha. Paka is while burning in the kiln, it's the baking, and Shosha while it is getting sun-dried. And therefore, Yajna being a very noblest activity, utmost care was taken for the perfection and operation-free process, you know, and therefore this accuracy of mensuration, that is also very, very important. And this reference, you know, I was amazed to see how our seers have meticulously and very accurately measured what is the portion which could be shrunk, you know, at the end of baking and drying, and therefore the wet mold should be more than required. So I think this was what I wanted to share, and I'll stop sharing. So this is a small attempt of finding out how the ancient Indian ritualists, you know, they are all the ritual people. They wanted to perform sacrifices, but in that also, you know, by constructing the chittis, various shapes and sizes, that is number one. And then the perfection in building that layer by layer, there is a perfection, perfect measurement, mensuration, and then the size of the bricks also. So I think I close on this, and I'm very thankful to Namaste 2020, especially Indic Academy for giving this opportunity. Thank you, Hari Om.
Thank you, Professor Gauri Mahulikar, for that wonderful session. We now have Dr. R.N. Iyengar. He's professor retired from the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. He is currently director CAHC at Jain University, again in Bangalore. And he's currently editing the Vriddha Gargeya Jyotishyam, a pre-Siddhantic text on astral science from manuscripts. He's also writing a monograph on astronomy in the Vedas, and he will be speaking to us on the transdisciplinary nature of Indian astral science. Thank you, sir.
First, let me thank the organizers for inviting me to this panel, the August panel. I was attracted by the words, the science and art that is being combined. The national education policy is also telling about the same thing. And what I have understood is that the knowledge has to be seamless, from science to engineering or technology or mathematics or whatever. Already, we had a very interesting inauguration by Ambassador Ranganathan about cultural interactions and about what Indian culture means today, not only in India, but to the outside world. Then our chairman, Professor Kirk, has given a wonderful introduction in the sense of what is physical reality and what is the nature of physical reality, how it has to be seen. Of course, each person may have his own way of doing things, but nevertheless, there has to be, when we discuss, there has to be some kind of commonality about these things. Now, we have heard the mesmerizing presentation by Professor Ramasubramanian. I was totally mesmerized by his shloka reading, which reminded me of my childhood days in the Mysore Sanskrit Pathshala, where my teachers would say, Astyuttarasyam Dishidevatatma, they would start, and that still rings in my ear, the way it was done, and that is an excellent foundation. We had the presentation, almost a mathematical type of presentation, very near to my heart by Professor Mahulikar. And I have spent considerable time on such kind of questions. And what I found was one of the Vedas she showed, I have no time to discuss that here, that is the Darshiki Vedi, number 10 in her diagram, is actually the orbit of the moon in the space as transmitted, mapped onto the ground. We have done considerable amount of work on that. And one could develop a total lunar astronomy out of that, even though it became a ritual later on. Perhaps prior to that, as the mantras themselves indicate, our ancients were doing such kind of astronomy, even to find out the Saros cycle, that is the 3339 number, which is the 18-year period, the 3 Nishata, 3 Sahasrani, which comes in Rigveda twice. Well, anyway, that is not the point that I'm considering. I mentioned that because the person who speaks last has the advantage of taking points from his predecessors. Now, you see, in my professional life, I was dealing with earthquakes. By that I mean, I was working on hazard calculations, finding out the safety of dams, bridges, nuclear power plants, and a variety of such questions. Now, India being a highly seismic, these questions are extremely important. So in that connection, when I looked at the ancient text to satisfy my own curiosity in the initial stages, what I found was that there are several theories even about earthquakes. And one of the theory was, which I found from Parashara, was that the mountains were flying and the mountains were stabilized, and Indra cut the the wings and things like that, and then the mountain stabilized, some mountain went down, and then earth prayed that she may become safe and like that. And what it indicated to me as a engineering seismologist, there should have been a time when earth was very unstable, and these people have either by direct experience or by speculation, whatever, they have come to some conclusions, some kind of theories on this, which are not totally off the mark. So after my retirement, mainly, my question was, how we have come to this, from where we have come, how we have done that. That is the transmission of some ancient knowledge as it has slowly seeped into the 21st century, at least as far as we are, that is the people, insiders to the culture, the Indian culture are concerned. And surprisingly, what I found was, there are so many statements in Rigveda itself for Indra hitting the mountain, Indra cutting the mountain, Indra's pushing down the mountains, kind of things. Of course, the traditional interpreters have not taken Arbuda as a mountain at all. That doesn't matter to me, because Arbuda, we know, at least in popular parlance, Arbuda is the Aravalli mountain. And so I was wondering whether there is really some serious geography in our Vedas. That is how we started. And I find the following. I'm showing a map here. Please concentrate on the following. This is the Yamuna river, which turns east like this, whereas there are some rivers which go east. And this point is a region of bifurcation. And these are the Aravalis which are shown here. And what the Rigveda 1.51 says, Mahantam Chidarbhudan Nikramihi Pada. The translation is very clear. Even Sayanacharya interprets only like that. The Arbuda, he takes it as a Rakshasa or a demon. That's all the difference. That you have pushed him down. And then again, Tamindram Parvatan Na Bhojase Maho, etc. And you are the person who pushed down the great mountain even down. There are so many such things, and Arbudam, Nicha, Jaba, Ade, Tamindram, Somasya, etc. I will not go into the details. And you know, this matches almost nearly with what modern geologists are telling, that the northern part of the Aravalis went down due to some very serious tectonic or whatever features. Whereas the Rigveda says these were all extraterrestrial. That is, from astral reasons it happened. Something came and pushed it down or whatever. Whereas the moderns would say, almost agree with the same thing, and that is the reason why Yamuna, which was Proto-Yamuna, which was going towards west, turned suddenly to the east. This was the reason given, and which also the reason for the drying up of the river Saraswati. So this seems to be, to me, it indicated, well, there is quite a bit that we should not ignore this kind of astral signs, so to say, because all of the Veda, more or less 99% is only astral, as I have found out. And then, as I went from Rigveda to other Vedas, wanted to see what it says about Maru, that is the desert region. And this is just a map which is available on the web. I took it up. It roughly shows the Vedic kingdoms. Let us not worry about that. There is a mantra. In fact, you know, I was looking at the textual kind of thing. Maitrayani Samhita, Deva Satramasata, Kurukshetre. So Kurukshetra is mentioned, and it is the gods who did a Satra here, or a Yaga. What was that Yaga which was done by the Devas is a different thing, whereas we are more concerned nowadays with the Yagas that are done by the Manavas, or the people on the ground. But it further says, actually, the Taittiriya Aranyaka gives very details of this. Deva vai Satramasata, it again starts like that. Tesham Kurukshetra Vedirasit. For the gods, the Vedi was the Kurukshetra. Tasya Kandava Dakshinardha Asit. The Kandava we know. Kandava is the southern part of Kurukshetra. Even in Mahabharata we know that. And Turgnam Uttarardha, Parina Jaganardha, Marava Utkara. This is an important thing. We already mentioned about Utkara. And this Maru was the Utkara for the gods. So this is a natural phenomenon, which of course has been transmitted into a kind of a mapping on the ground, which has been done. Our people experience this, maybe a natural disaster, maybe a shower of meteoritic showers which happened, or whatever it may be. There was some problem in that region. And this has been carried over by few other intellectuals like Parashara, Vruddhagarga, and Lagada to a large extent to make the astral science mapping onto the ground. Now, what I found, the overarching universal perception for humanity is Dyauh Pita Prithivi Mata. So some ideal is needed. So it appears that whatever is happening in the sky, there was some reflection of it on the ground, but these people were more inclusive. It is not just India, they would say the Prithivi Mata. So between Dyauh and Prithvi is the Antariksha. This tripartite division is fundamental to follow the knowledge. Because I was asked to speak about how astral sciences might have evolved into the other kinds of sciences slowly in India. If you see our Sanskrit text, not only the Siddhantic astronomy and the later Brihad Samhita and other texts, but pre-Siddhantic texts in whatever little proportion they are available, it is the astral and this tripartite division which has led to the physical, spiritual, religious, mathematical, scientific, historical, geographic, cultural, whatever it is. All has been transmitted from that way only with a tripartite division. Now, I already showed you something about the geographic information which can be collected. Very little I have showed, only maybe 1% of whatever is available in the Vedas. I can't go into that. I want to, in today's presentation, say something about on history or time which has affected all our culture. But we have to keep in mind the following. Our first Shanti mantra was said, Shanti Nilava Vendam in Tamil. So it's a beautiful song which was there. And Ramasubramanian also referred to that. Yes, of course, it has to be peaceful. But unfortunately, we see that peace doesn't come just like that. Peace is a normal position, because we presume. Then there is always perturbation. There is always disturbance or deviation from that normal. On earth, on atmosphere, and also in the sky. So the normal rhythm, when it is upset, our text would call that an utpata. Actually, Rigveda would call it an adbhuta, whereas the word utpata comes much later. Adbhuta or utpata, more or less of the same kind of thing. Adbhuta would mean an Agni, a special Agni in the sky, whereas utpata can be even in the atmosphere or even on the ground. And this utpata is due to also a devata. That is niriti, is perhaps an absence of rita or an opposite of rita. It's also a devata. Niriti is also a devata like Soma, Indra, Agni. If you worship Soma, Indra, Agni, we can worship niriti also, there is no problem. In fact, Niratiya Swaha is also there, only except Apa Upasprishya has to be done when that Swaha is given. That's all the difference, because there is a pollution concern with Niratiya. That is the only difference which is there. So among the many such deviations from the normal, the most serious was an astral abnormality. That was when the pole star, believed to be fixed, and it was called Dhruva, moved. This is the most serious anomaly that I have come across in the text so far. There are so many other anomalies. There is no time for all of that. There is a full chapter called the Adbhuta Brahmana in the Shadvimsha Brahmana, which talks about anomalies and what Shanti is to be done. And this has been carried over further by Vruddhagarga and others and has come down to us even to this day in terms of Navagraha Shanti and other Shantis. We can't go into those anomalies. Now, what is this anomaly concerned with the pole star? Modern astronomy tells that Polaris became the pole star. That is the present day Polaris in what we call the Ursa Minor, only around 1600 of our era. That is about 400 years before. There was no fixed star or a pole star for observers, for example, in the Gupta period, say around 200 AD or so. Because I'm showing that because the Puranas and others which describe the story of Dhruva could not have seen a pole star at all. If you think that they wrote by seeing the sky and writing the books. Because we all agree that, you know, it is a oral tradition which has come down to us, and much of this oral text or the information was written down, at least as the mainstream Indologists would say, roughly from around 100 BC to 200 AD or 300 AD kind of thing. Now, Dhruva is known to all of us. It is a children's story of the child Dhruva becoming the pole star. But how did they come to that conclusion if they had not seen it? Was there, before the Puranas, a concept that Dhruva has to be a fixed star? And if they did not see one, or did they have an earlier source for this information? This is the one which bothered me for quite a long time, for nearly about 10 to 15 years. And I'm just presenting 2 or 3 slides on that. Now, what we find is, earlier to Brahmanda Purana, the Yajurvedic texts refer to this. Now, among the Puranas, I find that the Brahmanda and the Vayu are the earliest, are the ones which are nearest to the Vedic concept or the Vedic information which is there. And even though the story of Dhruva is more popular through the Vishnu Purana is something like a transition between these two. And all these are actually astral. You can see the Puranas have come from some astral concepts only. The Devas, they are all shining. The Rakshasa, they are all Tarakasura, Andhakasura, Asura, they are all in the sky. So in other words, these are all astral or atmospheric concepts which are transmitted as stories or what I would call legends. And it's a wonderful way, as I have understood of late, of preserving information. If the information is preserved as a differential equation, maybe it would get lost, nobody would look at it. But if it is preserved in the form of a story, maybe it continues for a long time and the culture would get preserved, even though there could be some aberrations or anomalies, but the information is inside codified or preserved in a wonderful way. Now, what Yajurvedic texts talk about Dhruva, we will see that in one text it is said it is fixed. In the other text it is said it is moving. So it is an important information. If it had really moved, did they observe that also? Or if they saw that it was fixed, did later people know that it moved? This is the question which comes up. Now, the text that I am referring to is the Taittiriya Aranyakam. In fact, our Professor Ramasubramanian knows that by heart. And it is a text which is used in South India very regularly, a beautiful thing. And there is quite a bit in the text for all of us to understand, all of us to read, realize, as he said, Shrotavyo, Mantavyo, Nididhyasitavyascha. We have to do all that also. This is Aranyaka. There is a section called Swadhyaya Brahmana. And in the Swadhyaya Brahmana, a Divya Shakwaraha is described. Sava Yesha Divya Shakwaraha Shishumaraha. And
Namaskar, sir.
Sorry?
Professor Iyengar, you have 1 minute left, sir.
I didn't understand.
There is only 1 minute left for your presentation to finish.
Only 1 minute left for my presentation. Oh, okay. All right. Then let me skip it, come to the conclusion. This is a 4 stars, and this is in fact the, I'm showing a figure here where Alpha Draconis was the pole star in 2830 BC. And the Brahmanda Purana, it doesn't talk about the story of Dhruva at all, but gives a beautiful description of the Meru Mandala, of the Meru model for a pre-Siddhantic astronomy in about 2 chapters. And the figures, the physical model it gives are this, either the Kulala Chakra or, the Tailapida Chakra. And from this model, the modern concept of, or the modern I would say, because the temples have borrowed some of these concepts, and the Jain and Buddhist culture also adopts the Meru model. But Dhruva moved away after 2800 BC, around 1900 BC. and the star also moved, but the concept of Meru, which was not visible anyway, still very strong, that something connects the earth to the sky. Now, the moving Dhruva is in the Maitrayani Aranyaka, where a king questions his rishi, why everything is so uncertain in this world. Sarvan Chedam Kshaishnam Pashyamaha. And one of the things he says is Dhruvasya Prachalanam, and then Prithivyaha Sthanad Apasaranam, earthquakes, and so many things. And the interesting thing is, after that, the Upanishad starts. So in other words, the Vedantic things start from an astral observation, where even the star which is supposed to be fixed, I would stress on that even. So he questions that everything is transit, and we have to understand what is Kala. That time is there in the same Aranyaka, and it says Suryo Yonihi Kalasya, it starts. And fortunately, it says during that time, the winter solstice started not at the beginning of Shravishta, as in Veda, Lagadas Jyotisha, but Shravishthardham Agneyam. This is possible around 1600 to 1800 BC. So you can see that Dhruva was fixed in the Taittiriya Aranyaka. I don't say that the whole of Taittiriya Aranyaka was composed then. And in fact, the Rigveda should be older than the Taittiriya Aranyaka, because the Taittiriya Aranyaka contains quite a bit of Rigvedic text also. And so we get a chronological footprint. And this is important from one point of view that Professor Kak was mentioning, the inner science and the physical science. It's a combination. It's a seamless thing, because there is one concept here which is very beautiful. Surya Yonihi Kalasa, it is the Surya who is the starter, generatrix of all time. But there is Kala and Akala also. So before Surya was Akala, he says, or without Surya, it is going to be Akala. It's a highly philosophical Upanishad. I can't go into that. And this was picked up. This is a two-stage solar zodiac. Only ayanas are there. And hence, this was taken further. And you would see that from out of this, all our literature, all our culture has come. Religious culture, scientific culture, social culture. Concept of showing Dhruva star during marriage. And in fact, is a very important thing. Shankaracharya refers in the Bhashya of Vishnu Sahasranama, the Nakshatra Nemi refers to Shishumara. That is what he says. And this we know very peculiarly.
Can you wind up, please, sir?
Okay, thank you very much, madam. You can wind up.
What we really want is a conversation on some of the ideas that came up, and also addressing the question, how is it that Indian knowledge system, not just specific details, because every culture of the world has its own unique details, its own unique history, its own unique experience with various artifacts and technologies, and probably learning things. But we want to sort of have a little conversation in the time that is left on what is it that India can do by way of projecting its soft power of its unique experience. And we, of course, all know that one aspect of that unique experience are India's inner sciences, which is the reason why the entire world has taken so much to yoga and Ayurveda. Now, before I request the second go around, I just want to make one small point. Just as yoga has become very popular all over the world, so has Ayurveda. And the reason behind this popularity of Ayurveda is that allopathy, modern medicine, doesn't seem to do very well when it comes to chronic diseases. And then it's very well known, the former editor of Lancet wrote a famous essay saying that 80 to 90% of all published clinical medicine literature cannot be replicated. And the reason why it's not replicated is because of bad design, of the expectations that pharma companies have from the researchers who are working in medical fields. And that's the reason people want something which is holistic. And Ayurveda is that holistic medicine paradigm. Now, I just want to make one small point about Ayurveda, which is not very well known. Ayurveda is based on tripartite logic because you have three doshas, and of course in Sankhya itself you have three gunas. And modern mathematical logic has shown that analysis in terms of three categories is more efficient than analysis in terms of two categories. In other words, ternary logic is superior to binary logic. Now, allopathy is based on binary logic, and Ayurveda is based on ternary logic. So what one would need, even though Ayurveda is already popular to a certain extent, but there's also opposition to it. For example, in the US, from the American Medical Association, very sharp opposition to it. And so what is required is for Ayurveda to be put on a more firm ground so that there are pramanas or proofs which are established by way of double-blind experiments. And besides, the epistemology of Ayurveda is used to confront new diseases or new pathologies and problems. And Ayurveda has to go beyond, or Indian knowledge systems have to go beyond a mere referencing to various old texts such as Sushrut Samhita or Charak Samhita or Ashtanga Hridaya and say this is what it was and now we're going to identify. That's not good enough. What is required is, as a vital discipline, it's got to let itself be subjected to the same kind of scrutiny that any other scientific discipline is put to, and it's only then that Ayurveda will be able to go out and find its true place, not only in the rest of the world, but also in India. So I just want to leave it out there, and possibly now, Ambassador Ranganathan, would you want to address that? Maybe we could go in the same go around. Your speaker, your microphone. Yeah, you have to unmute. Sripriya ji. Yeah, Sripriya ji, would you like to address some of the larger questions, if not specifically Ayurveda, but the larger questions of India needing to present its knowledge heritage in ways so that skeptics across the world would be able to accept it, not just as something which is different and therefore attractive, but as something which is scientific and therefore of great inherent value?
You know, this is, I guess, element of the Indian traditions, not only by way of medicine, but also of all the other aspects of our science, which are already pretty well recognized. Now, again, I'm sorry to be focusing so sharply on Korea, though I can, if we have the time, also diverge into some of my experiences. For example, when I was looking at Myanmar and in Bangladesh. But when I look at Ayurveda, if I pick up the example of Ayurveda, now this is an area where I think conceptually and personally there is a lot of acceptance, a lot of receptivity, and a lot of respect for this as a means of healing and a means of coming out of ailments here in Korea. However, there is like in the US, like you mentioned, that there is a lot of resistance from the American Medical Association. Similarly, in the Korean Western medicine fraternity, there is a lot of suspicion about alternative medicines. And this is not really just only the Indian system of medicine, but also the Oriental systems of medicine. So, the via media that has been devised over here, and which we are now trying to work with the Koreans and telling them that we need to, bring this more on the mainstream, is that they allow use of Ayurveda in the case of terminal illnesses. So when the allopathic doctors have given up, and the patient is in a way doesn't have any further hope with the Western medicine, then they say, okay, you can do your worst, literally in that sense. But when I talk to at a very I mean, it sounds very basic and very frivolous, but the common man, they talk to me about turmeric, they talk to me about Indian herbs, they talk to me about Indian roots, and they say that the Korean systems, the Korean grandmothers, the what they have inherited from their forefathers, they also have very similar kind of systems. I used to see this in Myanmar as well. I mean, Myanmar, of course, which is much closer to where we are, and there is a lot of interplay across our borders. The people from our northeast and Myanmar go back and forth. So there is a far greater understanding of our herbs, their herbs. So there is that comfort is very high. On a more esoteric plane, I think many of the things with both Dr. Ramasubramanian and Dr. Iyengar have mentioned by way of the astronomical, the astrological kind of traditions, and these are areas where I think a lot more of education will be required before this can be absorbed, because all that these people know is that the Indians were the first to come up with the concept of zero, and that's such a perfect number, and so on. So if we are really to capitalize on the wealth that we have, the heritage that we have, then I think far more of academic interface and connections will have to be established, and that has to also be made more how should I say, not only intelligible but also more relevant for the young person of today, who is, everything is very quick. It has to be done in a 5-minute podcast rather than in a lengthy presentation. I think that is a challenge that we will face, not just in this country but in most cultures across the world, that this is the instant generation, and they want everything to be conveyed in a very easily digestible mode. So yeah, so that's the only real input that I have to offer on this front.
But is it possible that Indians themselves don't know very much about their own heritage, because our education has almost nothing on Indian sciences? It's basically a copy of the Western curriculum, which has been transplanted in India. And therefore, we don't have enough interlocutors, enough people who are speaking of the Indian way of looking at the world in a convincing way. Now, of course, there are individuals, there are some great, very articulate people, but by and large, most people are not very comfortable doing it. So could that be one of the challenges that we must pay attention to back in India?
No, I think there is, I wouldn't completely agree with this. While many of us have been brought up in the conventional, Western syllabus kind of a mindset, and all of us have been through this. I don't know how many of us have gone through that very rigorous curriculum where there is little of the traditional systems of Indian education that are at play. But that has not prevented us from holding on to this knowledge and in a way not only respecting but also reflecting this understanding. So even though it may not have been imparted to us in a formal classroom setting, I think it is we are all very proud of it. I don't think there is anybody who can say that we have not that we have shied away from expressing this also in whatever form, whether in the field of our personal conversations with friends, with the external world, with our own children. You know, I think we share a lot and we pass on a lot through the non-formal education routes, which are far more powerful than we would give it credit for. And I also think that in the past few years, maybe since the turn of the century, there has been a greater how should I say, a greater determination on the part of both the Indians in positions of influence and the common the common man, so to speak, to express the wealth of Indian culture in a far more passionate and a far more aggressive way. And that is a change that I can certainly see, as I said, from the turn of the century, but with greater punch over the past 5 years or so. I don't think we are reticent or apologetic about our culture anymore, which was possibly the case 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah, a wonderful point. I agree with you. Now, let me turn to Professor Ramasubramanian, because as Ambassador Ranganathan said, generally all that most people in Korea know about Indian science is zero. The invention of this symbol zero, and maybe that's true elsewhere as well. So Professor Ramasubramanian is perhaps the world's premier authority on the Kerala School of Mathematics and Astronomy, where amazing stuff was done before the scientific revolution that started in Europe. And this was prior by a couple of 100 years. So Professor Ramasubramanian, what do you think can be done to first of all, encapsulate this information, not just for scholars, but for the general public, so that this can also be a part of what we use for projecting India's soft power around the world?
Okay. Thank you. I mean, it's very interesting to note that this zero was mentioned repeatedly. So let me take a certain tangential view on the zero. So we have been talking about this number zero, which was invented by India and so on and so forth, and we are so proud of it. I am going to say that some other zero which was discovered is far more essential. What is it? So if we look into this yoga, so which has been repeatedly said, so yogaha chittavritti nirodhaha is what we see. Okay, this is the definition which is stated. This nirodha can mean various things. One is sort of arresting, so channelizing. The other is completely stopping. So you can just view it in very many ways. Normally, I mean, what is it that India has to contribute? I would just say in a slightly different way. So from the viewpoint of zero. Normally, the world thinks that when we have more things, then we can be more happier and so on and so forth. So India has to categorically say one thing. So we generally feel Vishaya Sevataha Sukham. Okay. So what India has to say is Vishaya Seva Vitrishnataha Sukham. Okay. So if you try to make this zero, so Vishaya Seva Vitrishnataha Sukham, this is something which one has to sort of contemplate. So it is not something which is easily digestible, but this is a very important contribution. So this so seva is something engaging with and returning. So our own indriyas which are just loitering all around, and the mind, so is something which will give you far more immense happiness, which will be far more eternal. This is one thing. Now coming to the viewpoint which was expressed by our ambassador Sripriya Ranganathan. Indeed true that today, for the past 5-10 years, some knowledge which was not that well known has been made available regarding the Indian contribution. But there is a lot of ignorance. I must tell you that there is a lot of ignorance regarding the major contributions that have been made by Indians. And I see this in these institutes. So for a nation to progress, so one needs to educate. So that is the point I think which Professor Subhash Kak was trying to. In one circle, maybe in the ambassador circle, so you may be hearing something else. In our academic circle, I think we hear something else. So there is a lot of difference among various circles, and the larger circle is one of completely ignorant. So this is a much bigger problem. So the point that we have to take into account is to educate. So to educate people and make them shed their ignorance. So that is all, as simple as that. And India really has something which the world really seeks for. So I'll just wind up with one verse. Nasti buddhir ayuktasya nachayuktasya bhavana nacha bhavayata shantihi ashantasya kutas sukham. Okay, so this is what the prayer song started. Nasti buddhir ayuktasya. Buddhihi ayuktasya nasti means one who has no any control over his sense organs. He has no intellect. Nacha yuktasya bhavana. Bhavana is a state in which you can contemplate. So this is absolutely going to be impossible for him. Nacha abhavayataha shantihi and ashantasya kutas sukham. So this is one of the major crises that we see in various places. On the other hand, in the Indian tradition, so you have learned to live with what you have, so without using the credit cards and making the country suffer later. So this is something which are very interesting things that we have to learn. So there are countries which have run into trouble by asking people to keep on spending when they don't have anything. So we have been teaching people to live in a conservative manner. So this is another important aspect, I think, which I see. We have something where we have to offer how, if you are able to accommodate others, I mean, you feel more happier. So than trying to fulfill your own interests. So there are various aspects, I think, which India has to offer. I think I will just conclude here and allow others to share their views.
No, excellent point. The point being that it's something to do with the inner science or inner knowledge. That renunciation is also something very powerful. What India teaches, and this could be a part of soft power related to the arts and inner sciences and so on, that that letting go is extremely important, because one of the problems in the US, where I've lived for many, many years, is that in the face of unprecedented prosperity, there is also unprecedented unhappiness. And that's because somehow in the cultural framework, this whole idea of how giving things up can lead to happiness. That's something that people don't know, and that's something that carries with it a very deep psychological truth. So now, Gauri-ji, would you like to add something to all of this? Since you have worked on the Vedas, and incidentally, I must tell you, you talked about the Shatapatha Brahmana and all the Vedas and so on. I wrote a book on it. I wrote several dozens of papers on it in the 90s, where this is a very long story, which I don't want to get into, but I would want your views on our immediate conversation. What do you think we should be doing to leverage the knowledge that we have to help Center for Soft Power and similar organizations in India to take India abroad, so that the whole world becomes India in a certain sense?
Yeah, thank you, Subhashji. I know you have written a book on that, and it was very harsh on my part to speak when you are chairing this panel, right? But then just because, you see, I'm not a mathematician, I'm not a scientist, but I'm a Sanskritist. And I have a source to Katyayana, to Baudhayana, to Shatapatha and others. So I read it from the Sanskrit background and I try to bring it out, So what ideally, I mean, the whole world becoming India, the Sanskritist and the scientist, or as Chinmayanandaji used to say, the East and the West are the IKS, Indian knowledge systems, and the contemporary knowledge systems, CKS. Unless they amalgamate, they come together, it's not going to happen that there is a change in the entire world or the thinking of the world. So the need of the hour is IKS and CKS should be in a wedding, in a wedlock for forever, So because as I said, I'm not a scientist. See, there are two mathematicians and computer scientists sitting here. Who am I to talk about geometry and arithmetic in Vedic sciences? But then this is what a Sanskritist would know, And I feel that even in the soft power, we are going to have in Namaste 2020 a column workshop. The geometrical designs, the column, if you see, the South Indian column, or maybe the Madhubani, or maybe the Maharashtrian Chaitrangan, which is called a typical Rangavali, which they put in Chaitra Masa. So there are, like line drawings, there are circles, there is an entire ecosystem which is embedded into the Rangavali. There are so many birds and insects, the butterflies, and Gopadma and elephant, so many things are there. So entire ecosystem is also embedded into our thing. And it starts from line drawing. And then I would like, to trace it. I mean, everybody has done it to the Shri Yantra, the Trikona Bindu Sthita, there is a Bindu. And then around that, you go on increasing your column, whether it is Poo column. Now it has already started in Kerala, it's the Poo column thing because Onam is coming, right? So the Poo column or whatever, there is a Bindu. That is a Shanku basically. And then around that, you go on fabricating everything. So it's a very marvelous science, and we should try to see the science behind whatever we do, even as simple a thing as a column.
I totally agree. I think what we want is the best of both the East and the West, as Swami Chinmayananda said. You cannot, even if we wanted to love the West, we cannot love the West unless we love ourselves. Nobody can love somebody else unless they love themselves. And this is something, sadly, we seem to have forgotten for some time. After independence, we thought, well, we should abandon everything that's Indian and just copy what the West is doing. But you cannot copy effectively, even if you wanted to, unless you knew yourself, unless you loved yourself. So wonderful point that you made. So now, Professor Iyengar, from your perspective, since you've been a part of the world of science as an engineering professor, and now you do Sanskrit and you also do astronomy. So where do you think are the opportunities for the Center for Soft Power and for all of us, because we are in it together, so as to move ahead and to build bridges with like-minded people in other countries?
Well, for that to happen, I've heard all of you quite closely. First, the bridge has to happen in this country, that is in India. The bridge between the ancient and the modern, that is the Western intellectual tradition and the ancient intellectual tradition of India itself. That has not happened. Apart from the 200-year gap we are having in the education system, we have been very defensive. I'm talking about not the university education, but about the Sanskrit university education. I'm talking about it. It is the Sanskritists who have to think originally and take the tradition forward. Right now, what is happening, some of us, as Professor Kak pointed out, because of our interest, and as Ambassador pointed out, we have not left off our culture totally, but we have kept something intact and try to combine it and then try to piece and then say for our own self-satisfaction or for a group of people we are doing it. But this has to happen at the national level. What is happening? I'm extremely unhappy that the mathematics department in the Kupaswamy Shastra Research Institute in Madras was closed in the 1935 or 40. And I know in Mysore, in the Sanskrit Pathshala, there used to be an Ayurvedic section and there used to be a music section also. That is all closed. Now, if you see about classical music, forget about all other things. There are no original books at all which are written in musicology. Musicians are great musicians are there, they are taking it forward. But about 18th century, no music book has come in Sanskrit. People who write in English, people who write in Kannada or Tamil, they only rehash the same old thing and whatever their teacher said, they are going to rewrite. That won't take this knowledge, the Indian knowledge forward. And for that to happen, the government of India, I would say, and people who make the opinion creators like the ambassadors, they have to insist that, you know, the Vedic tradition, the Vedic texts themselves, they have to be interpreted once again. Like they should ask, like a Sayana Bhashya, write a new Bhashya in Sanskrit on the Rig Veda. And it is going to be a lifetime project for a group of people, and that should start. We have not even made this starting. And when I wrote and when I talk about asking the Sanskrit universities to at least teach a little bit of mathematics, they say, sir, we are giving computer education. Well, computer literacy means nothing. They will cast the horoscope on the computer and give a prediction. That doesn't take them far away. How do you make the Kerala mathematics continuous with what is being taught in the Sanskrit Pathshalas? That is my concern. That is not happening yet. And I think all of us have to create an opinion to see that this bridge, this gap is bridged in the Sanskrit universities. The government for some reason gives lakhs of rupees and keeps them in good humor, but that won't take us forward at all. And the time will come when, you know, somebody outside, maybe in United States or in Korea or in Japan, they will start a Sanskrit university where they will think in Sanskrit, they will write in Sanskrit. And I wish that happens in this country as early as possible.
Professor Iyengar, I totally agree. You made an extremely important point. Totally agree that that bridge has to be created within India. But I differ slightly with you on one small point, which is that we cannot always wait for the government to take the initiative. Maybe we within the country, together with some wealthy people, because now there's a lot of wealth also within India, which was not the case, say, 40, 50 years ago, have to fund some private initiatives and then see and step back and see what is it that needs to be done, because we do know that Delhi has a lot of constraints. There are political constraints. There is this whole weight of inertia. Things have been going in one way. You know, the education policy or the government is like a big ship, and to change the direction of that ship is not so easy. So I think it could be easier done if people were to get together, and the initiatives of Harikiran Vallamani ji is a wonderful one, the Indic Academy, and maybe that is the kind of a thing, if it is scaled up and if specific recommendations are made, because people in Delhi also want to know which way to go. They don't understand which way to go because they are still on the other side of the bridge. And even if their heart is at the right place, they don't know what should be done. So perhaps the leadership will eventually have to come from outside the government, from individuals. And once that leadership is able to show the outline of the path, perhaps there would be people in Delhi to embrace it and then possibly even make funds available for the next step to be taken. So this is what I think would be a productive way to go ahead.
I agree with you. It is both the private and the government participation is needed, because the policies are done by the government. And the Sanskrit universities, the number of students are large. I understand even in Karnataka Sanskrit University, the exam is taken by some 20,000 students. And what is going to happen to them after they get their degree or whatever? These are the questions. They are all intellectuals.
Right.
They are highly intellectual people. There is absolutely no doubt about it. But they can't think in Sanskrit when it comes to addition or multiplication or division.
Can we have Harikiran ji say something?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Subhash. Actually, it's a very, very fascinating topic. Thank you for all the speakers, Ambassador, Subramaniam ji, Gauri ji, Iyengar ji, and you also. You are on our board, Academic Council board. Just wanted to add a few points. One is that we have established a Inter-Gurukula Universities Center. So we're talking about building a bridge. And this is exactly what we are trying to do. At the first level, we're trying to build a bridge between a Gurukula system, a traditional system, and a modern system. So the bridge between these two. So what we are trying to do is establish a Maha Gurukulam. Gurukulams are there all over India, but each Gurukulam has a certain focus. What we are trying to do is build a Maha Gurukulam, a multidisciplinary Gurukulam. So that is one thing. The same place, we're trying to establish a inter-university center. That inter-university center will build a bridge between the Gurukula system, the Indic knowledge systems, and the Indology. This is one bridge that we are trying to build. The other bridge that we are trying to build is a colleague of mine, Dimple Kaul. She is right now just finished her master's. There is a very interesting university called St. John's College in United States. There they have a curriculum called Great Books of Western Civilization. So they don't talk about Eastern civilization. They have a curriculum called Great Books of Western Civilization. First of all, we need to build a curriculum called Great Books of Indian Civilization. Once we develop this curriculum, then we need to build a bridge, which is exactly what she's trying to do. She's trying to build a bridge between East and West so that both these knowledge systems are dovetailed. So this is the kind of bridge that we are trying to establish. The other thing is, there is an institute called Santa Fe Institute in New Mexico. And since the topic is, we are talking about transdisciplinary nature, I want to just read out to you about the mission of Santa Fe Institute. And just a brief paragraph. Our researchers endeavor to understand and unify the underlying shared patterns in complex physical, biological, social, cultural, technological, and even possible astrobiological worlds. Our global research network of scholars spans borders, departments, and disciplines, unifying curious minds steeped in rigorous logical, mathematical, and computational reasoning. As we reveal the unseen mechanisms and processes that shape these evolving worlds, we seek to use this understanding to promote the well-being of humankind and life on Earth. This is one of the things that we are trying to do, is model ourselves also on Santa Fe Institute. So what this whole thing would be, a combination of a St. John's Institute that meets an Aspen Institute that meets a Santa Fe Institute. This is the kind of thinking that we need to bring and build a bridge across all these knowledge systems. And before I conclude, I also want to tell you that we are talking about Ayurveda in such glorious terms, but any person who Googles Ayurveda today, he will find a very interesting thing. The first thing that he comes across on Wikipedia is that the study of Ayurveda is pseudoscientific, while the practice can be classified as proto-science or unscientific. And it says, the Indian Medical Association characterizes the practice of modern medicine by Ayurvedic practitioners as quackery. The reason why I bring this point is that while we believe in Ayurveda, we have a ministry of Ayurveda, Ayush ministry is there. Worldwide, everybody celebrates Ayurveda, but there is another aspect of our culture that is being attacked constantly, which is hegemony by these institutions like Wikipedia and other institutions that classify our science, the first science on health. Ayurveda is the first science on health, a codified science on health by Susruta. That is classified as quackery. So how do we fight this simultaneously and some attacks on our knowledge systems? And we have to fight that and then preserve it. We have been decolonized. We have to be decolonized. We have to internalize and then promote it. There's so many challenges. And yes, we do need the tailwind of the government. Private wealth, private efforts are there, but we do need the the tailwind from the government. The new NEP has come. I do hope that this will bring about a transformation, because ultimately truth will prevail. The knowledge systems that we have is dharmic, sanatani, and therefore that will prevail. We are a part of a civilizational long this thing. So at this point in time, there is a global renaissance of this kind of sustainable thinking, this kind of thinking about traditional knowledge systems, indigenous knowledge systems. So I am very sanguine that all our efforts, the government efforts, the private efforts, all this will, and in our own lifetime, in the next 20, 30 years, we will see a renaissance of Indic knowledge systems, the transdisciplinary nature of our Indic knowledge systems.
I totally agree with that. And just to let those of you who may not know of how Europeans 200 years ago, European scholars decided that they are the ones who would interpret India to Indians. And in fact, Professor Minkowski, who holds the Bowden Chair of Sanskrit at Oxford University when he was inaugurated, and I have it in my essay on something on Indology I wrote for medium.com, the scandal of Indology. So there he says that we have created some protocols for the study of Sanskrit so that Indian scholars will not have a place at the table. So it's a multifaceted problem. And the problem is that while we have been administratively or politically free for 70 years, but our minds largely, excluding, you know, a minority of great people who have risen in India, who are keeping this fight up, but largely our education system has maintained attitudes which have kept this colonization of our minds current. So we need to fight that battle, and perhaps what Indic Academy is doing, and what a lot of individuals are doing, and what a lot of people in the foreign service and the administrative service and people in civil life are also doing in their personal capacities, will all contribute to a swell which would then lead to a change. Because I must add the fact that there are a lot of allies that we have in the West as well. It's not that all the West is against us. A lot of people in the West know that this is magnificent. In fact, some of the greatest writers, poets, artists, and scientists in the West have been inspired, and they have said so in their own words, by the Upanishads, by the Indian knowledge system. So we need to also celebrate that. We have friends, we are not friendless. And so long as we are committed to truth and to beauty, to kaushalam, so long as we do it with perfection, there's no way stopping us. With this, I conclude. Thank you very much, Aparna ji and Vijayalakshmi ji. So back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Subhash.
We'll have the video of what Madam has given us from the Korean embassy, and after that we will conclude. Otiji, can you just play the video?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ambassador. That was just a exhilarating display of the kind of work that the embassy there has been doing in bringing forth both the cultures together. By strange coincidence, one of the governing council members of Indic Academy is the Honorary Consul General in Hyderabad, Mr. Suresh Chukupalli. And so I'm very, very happy that our engagement with Korea would only deepen. Post-COVID, we look forward to coming over there and having a two-day conference to engage more deeply with the Korean culture. So I'm very grateful to you as an ambassador of goodwill, an island of excellence and positivity and cooperation to private initiatives like us. We are very grateful to you. Thank you, Subhash. You're always there for us. Thank you very much. Thank you. You've been always supportive and look forward to engaging with you more. So Ramasubramanian, thank you so much once again. Your talks always are fascinating because the loving way in which you, the paternalistic love with which you speak is very endearing for me. And in fact, I'm always grateful that your trip to Singapore and your stay with me, I actually started Indic Academy 5 years back. So I'm always grateful to you for that. Thank you, Gauri ji. Thank you for coming, and thank you, Iyengar ji. We're sorry we could not give you more time, but to all the viewers, we would definitely post your presentation and publish that so that everybody can access that. So thank you, everybody. Thank you once again. Thank you, Akka.
Thank you.